Hello, fellow seekers. In part 2 of our series exploring the nature of time, we will expand on the basic premise of our first video on this topic and explore the deeper implications for scientific theory and our understanding of reality as a whole. Exploring the idea that time is merely a measurement of change, not an independent entity, has some profound implications across philosophy, physics, and our fundamental understanding of reality. This conceptual shift alters not only our view of time, but also our understanding of concepts like simultaneity, eternity, and even the possibility of a beginningless or endless universe. Let's explore these implications in depth. Simultaneity reconsidered, synchronizing change, not events. If time is purely a measure of change, then simultaneity, the idea that two events happen at the same time, becomes ambiguous. In this model, two events are simultaneous, not because they occupy the same slice of an abstract timeline, but because they are counted within equivalent cycles of change. This concept dramatically changes our understanding of relativity. In Einstein's framework, simultaneity is relative, depending on the observer's speed and position. If time is just a measurement of change, we would see simultaneity as the alignment of specific changes or processes, rather than the alignment of time markers. Events that we might consider simultaneous from one vantage point may simply be different rates of change aligning momentarily. The relativity of simultaneity could then be reframed as the relativity of change rate synchronization, rather than purely spatial-temporal separation. This might also imply that simultaneous events in the universe don't align on an abstract timeline, but within overlapping cycles of recurring change, like two clocks ticking in harmony. Under this model, there is no absolute now spread across the cosmos, just change processes that momentarily coincide. Time contraction is just a slowing of relative change. That is, the twin paradox, where one twin travels at light speed while the other remains stationary, does not represent anything other than the rate of intrinsic change for the light-traveling twin slowing down. Thus, the appearance of more time passing for the stationary twin is simply a misunderstanding of the measurement of relative change. Eternity as infinite change, not infinite time. If time is merely a byproduct of change, then eternity, a state outside time, might simply represent an endless continuation of change. Rather than envisioning eternity as a static, timeless state, we could view it as a sequence where change never ceases. Timelessness wouldn't imply stillness, but the presence of changes that recur infinitely without end. This model reimagines eternity less as a place outside of time and more as an endless unfolding of cycles. For instance, the cycles of cosmic evolution, galaxies forming, stars igniting and extinguishing, could persist indefinitely, each event representing an iteration within a broader cycle of change. Eternity, then, is not the absence of time, but the boundless continuity of iterative change, a reality in which the counting of cycles never stops. Infinite and beginningless universe, a chain of unceasing change. If time doesn't independently exist, then an infinite or beginningless universe could be understood as a universe without a first moment of time. In such a universe, there was no beginning of time, but rather an infinite regress of change, an eternal chain of cause and effect. This perspective suggests that looking for a start to the universe may be futile. In a beginningless universe, all that has ever existed is change, with no original time zero from which everything began. The Big Bang might not represent the start of time, but merely a significant transformation in the state of the universe, a particularly intense phase in an unending sequence of changes. Such a view could shift cosmology's goal from finding the beginning of time to understanding the nature and mechanisms of this never-beginning and never-ending process of change. An infinite universe, then, is not infinite in time, but infinite in the potential for change and transformation. Implications for scientific theories. By discarding time as an independent variable and instead focusing on rates of change, we could fundamentally alter several key scientific theories. Quantum mechanics. Quantum theory currently treats time as a parameter that is fixed and unaffected by quantum states. But if time is instead a measurement of change, quantum events might be understood as fluctuations in states that count their own cycles of change. This could offer new insights into quantum entanglement, where particles separated by vast distances change states simultaneously. Instead of simultaneity, we might view entanglement as cycles of change occurring in harmony, creating an inherent connection that doesn't rely on an abstract timeline. Thermodynamics and entropy. In thermodynamics, time is often linked with the arrow of time, the direction in which entropy increases. However, if time does not exist independently, then entropy could instead reflect the accumulation of change within a system. Rather than saying entropy increases over time, we could see entropy as a cumulative effect of change. This view might help explain why time appears to flow only forward, since entropy is the outcome of continual, irreversible change, which doesn't require time itself to exist as an independent factor. General relativity. Relativity theory relies heavily on space-time as a four-dimensional construct. If time is not a true dimension, but a tool for measuring change, this might challenge the space-time continuum concept. Instead of envisioning gravity as warping space-time, we could view gravity as influencing the rate of change processes. Massive objects might slow down change cycles, such as atomic vibrations, giving the appearance of time dilation. This shift could invite new ways of modeling gravitational phenomena without relying on time as a spatial dimension. Rethinking reality. Time as illusion, change as the essence. If time does not independently exist, reality becomes a complex, interwoven tapestry of ongoing changes rather than a series of moments along a timeline. Concepts like past and future might be better understood as relative points within cycles of change. The past could represent previous cycles of certain changes, while the future is merely the anticipation of new changes based on existing patterns. This view challenges not only scientific theory, but also personal perspectives on reality. The self might not exist over time, but as a dynamic pattern of continuous change, transforming and renewing constantly. Philosophical and existential implications. Being and becoming. Philosophically, this concept merges being with becoming. If time does not exist, then our identities are not stable entities moving through a timeline, but dynamic patterns continually shifting. Identity is not a fixed self, but a flowing sequence of changes. This perspective might encourage a worldview in which impermanence and transformation are not disruptions, but the core of existence. Likewise, death and birth would not represent entries and exits from time, but transitions within the process of change. We might come to view life as a series of interactions and processes rather than a lifespan. In this sense, timelessness becomes not a state to be achieved, but an acceptance of change as the essence of all things. Our search for immortality might be reframed as understanding the nature of change itself, how patterns persist, adapt, and evolve. Practical ramifications, how we experience and value time. In everyday life, Seeing time as the measurement of change could radically shift how we experience and prioritize activities. Time management might transform into change management. Instead of seeing time as a finite resource to spend, we would focus on the quality and nature of changes we engage in. The emphasis would move from saving time to cultivating valuable, meaningful changes in our lives. Our societies built around the clock might benefit from a more organic approach, focusing on rhythms and cycles rather than strict timelines. Work, rest, and creativity could align more naturally with individual and collective cycles of change, leading to lifestyles rooted in change rather than in hours. In this paradigm, we begin to view life not as something stretched across a timeline, but as an interwoven series of changes, each carrying intrinsic value without the need for an abstract time to validate its existence. Thank you for spending time with me in the great abyss of knowledge that we call home.